Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. And today is a long-awaited on-air conversation with my very dear friend, Carey Davidson, who is the founder of NarStop. And Carey and I grew up here, right here in Tempe, Arizona, didn't we?
We are McClintock High School alumni. We've known each other for over 10 years.
maybe a few more than that. And then Carey, you and I also went to NAU. I'll never forget when you came and met me up at the Sky Dome, and I was in cheer practice, and you guys walked in. It was so cool to see you and Rick Tambro up there for the first time. I'd been there a semester before you. And I bought, do you remember I bought your moped?
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
And I rode that silly moped from my dorm all the way up to the Sky Dome with my little pom-poms on either side. That little piece of crap, it got me to and from for probably 1.5 to 2 years.
Was that the one with the pedals?
I don't know. I don't think so.
There was one with pedals, and then we had a Vespa. That was so much fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So who is this beautiful person next to you, Carey? Please introduce Stephanie for us.
Stephanie Siete is one of the leading and most foremost experts in the education awareness field when it comes to substance abuse, what's going on, not only in our community at a national level. She is a very sought after information deliverer, and she has got a personality and passion for helping people, unlike second only to maybe me.
I was just going to say that, probably, right? I can tell this is a good pair. Stephanie, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
And you're with Community Bridges.
Yes.
How long have you been with them?
Well, since we're dating ourselves.
Yeah, we are.
I've been at Community Bridges for over 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I grew up there, and I always tell people, who would have thought I was going to build a career talking about drugs? You know what I mean? I'm right out of college, health education background, moved to Arizona from Chicago, and you realize as a border state, there's so much happening down here. And I've built this huge career doing drug education, as Carey said, locally and nationally. I was running a little behind today because I was with 2,000 kids. I commend this high school for doing a general live assembly style. So they were small class settings. So it wasn't, 2,000 kids in one room, but in the classroom. Yeah. And they made it a life skill priority, right? History's great, math's great, but let's talk about fentanyl and vaping and poisoning of America.
Can we give them a shout out? Do you mind mentioning the name of the
Horizon High School?
Of course, Horizon.
Yep, deserves all the kudos.
I love it. And thank you for making time for Carey and I, and of course our viewers and listeners. And we're glad you just slid in right on time. How did you two meet?
Boy, I don't know. We met through the field, just going to different, there's a lot of effort being made in educating people about the risks that most people don't see. And there's a number of symposiums and conferences, and I ran into Stephanie attending some of those, saw her present, and was just totally impressed and said, that is somebody I need to get to know. And somehow or another, we connected, and she has championed a cause of saving lives. So we're in this together, and that's what it really is about at the end of the day: education, awareness, and saving lives.
Done. Yeah. Not that we're ending the show there. We're just getting started. And Carey, I've known you, as we mentioned, for several years, 40 plus years. That's a long dang time. And I know that you have your own personal story, and you've now been life-saving for families and individuals as it comes to intervention and taking care of themselves. So I don't know to what degree you want to share that story. I really want us to spend most of our time talking about NarStop and what this is standing between the two of you, and how folks can get involved and put these in the locations where we need it to save lives. So wherever you'd like to start with a backstory to get us to NarStop and what we're doing here today.
Okay, now I'll try and keep that at a Reader's Digest version, because as you said, we went to school together at NAU, and you know what I drank like in college. I was a fish. I am a person that is in their own personal long-term recovery, 22 years without mind-altering substances. I went to school to ironically get a degree in criminal justice, and ended up being a ski instructor, and then all of a sudden discovered marijuana and said, why would I want to arrest anybody for this? 20 years later, I'm in grad school to become an addictions counselor. So
Wow.
now I have a master's in counseling, a master's in addiction studies, and have dedicated my life to helping families one at a time that are impacted by someone they care about's substance abuse. I went into grad school thinking I was going to change the world. Came out of grad school realizing I'm not going to change the world, but I can help one family at a time. And with the development of NarStop, have come back full circle with the development of NarStop and also the emergence of fentanyl, that, you know what, we can make a bigger impact on a much larger level by getting this out there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's pause there because that's a great introduction to you. And for our viewers and listeners, Carey's all poised and professional right now, but Stephanie and I can both tell you that he's probably one of the funniest people that you'll ever meet, right? And also one of the most caring and the most dedicated and loving. You and I have had some really heartfelt conversations about what's passionate for you and for me. I have my own story with not my own personal battle, but someone very close to me that I lost through suicide, given addiction. And so I just, every time we connect or you and I are reaching out via text, I'm always grateful for you and your kind heart and your passion and really the legacy that you're creating on behalf of families who are struggling with addiction. And Stephanie, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I know you've already told us a little bit about your background. Maybe instead of introducing yourself, unless I forgot you forgot something, pick up where Carey left off. Where are we at with this drug issue and fentanyl specifically and those sorts of things? It doesn't have to be Reader's Digest version, but get our listeners and viewers caught up because, quite honestly, some people might be naive. I know I was for a very long time. Sometimes I still am. I've got a 16-year-old at home and I only know kind of what Carey shared with me, and grateful for organizations like you who come out and speak to his school or speak to parents. But what do we need to be paying attention to? Why are opioids addictive? What's going on with fentanyl? All the good stuff.
I'm going to piece it together because mine is my passion, right? Like why I do this. There's so many other things I know I could be good at. Public speaking is one of them, but my passion is around substance abuse, drug trends, and saving lives. And I figured this out in college, right? When you're taking like the HIV/AIDS class, this sex ed, drugs and society, I have no filter. I'm not ashamed. This is probably why we get along well. I will talk about anything. And I realized how many of my peers in college would come to me and ask questions, right? And I'm like, go to health services. But that was my light bulb moment where I realized if I'm not embarrassed to talk about things, people need information. You would think that life skill, like life information would be important to everyone. So I moved to Arizona and you realize, like I said, the drug thing is everywhere. I had to learn. My dad was a police officer outside the city of Chicago. I thought I knew until I get here. And I'll kind of backtrack before we even get into opioids. Someone had said something to me again over 20 years ago about crystal. And I'm like, who?
That'd be me.
Right? I was like, who's crystal? And they're like, no, crystal meth. And I was like, oh, well, cocaine's big in Chicago. It's what you see is various drug trends around the country. However, right now we're in this opioid crisis.
Okay.
And I feel like people didn't even know what an opioid was. So we had to explain that for a while and connect the dots that we've seen progression of painkillers being pushed, over prescribing America. Whether right or wrong, people got addicted to that. And an addiction to an opioid is awful, especially when you try to stop, right? I think I see light bulbs nowadays go off when I try to explain this to the general public. And I'm like, gosh, you stop your opioid use, you build up a tolerance, and now you're running to the bathroom. Nausea, diarrhea, vomit, muscle pain, because you stopped using.
Right.
So I explained to them the baby opioids were the pills, right? Then we got to the heroin. Where are we at today? I think most people watching and listening are going to say, oh, fentanyl's the crisis. We'll do ... and connect today that there's more than fentanyl. There are other stronger forms of fentanyl and opioids on the street. And people need life-saving devices and drugs like naloxone or Narcan. That'll get their breathing started. It could save their lives. And I think kids need to know that. Adults need to know that. You know what I mean? Like I do all these things at schools and I encourage kids to know what it is.
When
You
is it too young, real quick? When is it too young to tell our kids about this, do you think?
It's never too young. We're seeing
Agreed.
babies poisoned, pets poisoned, accidental poisoning. That's what we hear about all the time. Kids dying in a crib because the Airbnb wasn't cleaned.
Mhm.
Drugs being trafficked through, daycares. And we'll get there and I'll tell the personal stories. Carey knows what I do. I work with all these families who bury children because they were accidentally poisoned.
Mhm.
So if they're alive, it's never too early to start talking.
One of the things, as kind of even backtrack a little more, is oftentimes there is they're an addict, and why are they doing that? It's a choice. And as human beings, we are wired to do things that feel good. That's just or to avoid pain. And there, with the advent of stronger opioids, it's a greater pain relief. So what I'm getting at is most people don't, they're not in fifth grade saying, what do you want to be when I grow up? Well, I want to be addicted to opiates
Mm.
or crystal meth or smoke pot the rest of my life. They have a career path. However, when it comes to how can you've heard of people getting a runner's high. I will never get a runner's high. I don't have the tenacity. It hurts to run. However, if you could get that same wonderful feeling by ingesting 2 milligrams of a substance and not have to do any work, all of a sudden it's like, hey, this is easy street. I'm going to use this. It makes me feel better. I'm anxious. I'm going to take a Xanax. I have pain. I'm going to take this. And it works. What the challenge is brain chemistry. The brain chemistry says that felt good. I want more. And they keep taking more. And it's almost like an invisible line that is crossed. And once you cross that line, there's no going back because you've trained your brain how to feel good through ingesting the substance. And what happens in what we call recovery is you have to retrain the brain in how to feel good without ingesting a pill and just making it go away. So it starts off, and I think when we talk about addiction, and there's a lot of debate, should we call it an addiction, or is it substance misuse, or is it severe, substance use, moderate, extreme, severe? Basically what it is, it's how do I make myself feel better fast? And that's where the word addiction slips in, is when you cross that line and become dependent on that substance to feel good. And then, just as Stephanie described, when you say, hey, this is out of control, I'm taking too much, I don't want to do this anymore, and you start feeling worse than you've ever felt in your life, and just taking that pill will make you feel good, then you're stuck in the cycle.
Right.
And it's endless until you get into your own recovery and develop new and healthy coping mechanisms outside of just ingesting a pill.
Yeah. Stephanie, anything to add around opioids itself?
My biggest fear is you don't get addicted, you get dead. Because I will tell you right now, again, like he said, I'm stats and data. I probably talk this in my sleep, is less kids are using drugs historically, right? Less are using, but more are dying. It's because fentanyl will kill you the first time you touch it. 7 out of 10 pills contain enough fentanyl to kill someone. We are a border state. Arizona has the most trafficked fentanyl in the country through our state. You can buy a pill for as little as $1. It's cheap. Kid brain doesn't know any better. So there's no room for experimentation nowadays. That's why I'm so direct. I don't think it's a kid problem, but I just feel like we don't see a lot of building up the tolerance right now. If you take a tainted Percocet and Xanax and it's got fentanyl in it, or something like we can discuss nitazines or carfentanil, which have been seized here in Phoenix off the street, they're 50 times stronger than fentanyl. You don't get addicted, you get dead. And I will tell you, yay, Narcan, naloxone, great wonder drug that can save lives. But then you get into some stronger fentanyl, maybe it saves your life. This is where we are today.
One of the big challenges that is happening out there. There's a lot of people that are taking what they think is a Xanax, and Stephanie alluded to this. What they think is an Adderall, what they think is a different substance than something laced with fentanyl.
Mhm.
And they put a little bit of fentanyl in some, and they press these pills to look exactly like a legitimate pharmaceutical, but it has a little bit of fentanyl, a little bit of opiate in it. And they're not mixing these in FDA approved labs. They're mixing them in cement mixers, blenders, and they'll have 30 blenders all going, putting powders together, pouring it into a machine, and a pill press machine that actually presses the pill to look like an Adderall. And it's filler with a little bit of fentanyl in it, or maybe even now what we're starting to see is they're putting crystal meth in what is thought to be an Adderall. So they get the good feeling. They don't know what they're ingesting. They go, hey, Bobby sold me that Adderall. That felt good. I want to get another one. And then there's a pill that wasn't mixed well and has a chunk of fentanyl in it. And that's where you got 4 minutes. That's how long it takes for someone to suffocate.
Okay, great segue for NarStop. What is this sitting between the two of you? How did this come about? Let's start there.
Well, I think one of the closest things that I've ever seen to a miracle is naloxone. The drug and people, the brand name is Narcan. The actual medication is called naloxone. It can be delivered various ways. The most common and easiest way right now is through an intranasal spray. One of the biggest surprises that most people that would get an education on naloxone or Narcan, the brand name, is that it is completely benign unless you are in an opioid crisis.
Explain that.
If someone's having a heart attack, and because there's certain signs and symptoms to look for in when someone's been exposed to a fatal amount of opioids: pinpoint pupils, shallow breathing, unresponsiveness, they're out. I mean, my dad was a pastor. We all know that. I mean, I'm not going to say, okay, I'll say it. I fell asleep in church a few times. And I don't know if you've ever gone to church and felt like your head starts going down and all of a sudden you pop back up and you're like, oh, I almost fell. I hope I wasn't, I even got elbowed by my mom for snoring when I didn't pop back up. Well, what happens when someone gets into a situation where they've been exposed to a fatal amount of fentanyl opiates is that they keep sinking. They don't pop back up. They keep dropping. It's actually quite a peaceful death to the person that dies. You fall asleep. And among the challenges is that you cannot self-administer. If you think about it, when you start what they call in the addiction world, they call it nodding. Mm-hmm. And you've seen people slumped over. We've all seen videos of people slumped over on the street, looking like zombie land. Mm-hmm. This is zombie land. Well, when someone's bent over and looks like they're just like a zombie, what they are experiencing is the ultimate feel good. They are in utter bliss. Nothing else in the world matters except for that moment that they're in right now that is short of ecstasy. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking the drug ecstasy, the talk of feeling absolutely wonderful. But then when they keep sinking, that's when they go into a morbid cycle.
Yeah. I mean, you described it, and perfect drug that could save your life, naloxone. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people don't know enough, first of all, about why opioids kill you, right? They go, oh, drug overdose. Well, what drug? There's a lot of ways. Stimulants hurt our heart. Opioids hurt our breathing. And like Carey said, a lot of people go to sleep permanently. And that's the problem. On the nod, sometimes we don't notice some of those symptoms. You know what I mean? Oh, they're just tired, especially if it's a young person, they're hormonal. If they're working long hours, school, what have you, we do need to notice people's changes, their difference. What is their quote unquote normal? And everyone should have naloxone, right? Like to be able to utilize it. And even if they don't need it, it's not going to hurt them. If it was heart attack, it was methamphetamine. If it's an opioid, it'll save their life. Well, we hope. It'll be the
Mhm.
start to
Mhm.
saving their life, resuscitating the
Why
breathing.
don't we all have it? Is there a fee associated with it? Is it hard to get like some of these other,
Well, I got to come up with a better analogy than what I have. The best analogy that I have right now is naloxone, Narcan is approved for over-the-counter cells. You don't need a prescription, but the best metaphor I have is it's like condoms. You can go to a community health center and get free condoms.
Mhm.
You can go through a sex education class, and they'll usually be giving out free contraceptives there. Or you can go to the CVS, Walmart, buy your own condoms. And Narcan is very similar. There's last year they created an initiative for national naloxone saturation. In fact, here in Phoenix, you can go to the public library and pick up a bag of naloxone. I did that. Here's part of the challenge. I had to go 14 times in order to get my free naloxone because they were always out.
Wow.
They were out. And so that is part of of why we created NarStop, because quite bluntly, addicts are carrying their own Narcan. However, that being said, there is not one recorded case of someone in a fatal death spiral known as an overdose that has self-administered naloxone to save their own life. Not one. And most people that carry naloxone, it's in their purse, it's in their car, it's in their closet. It's somewhere that is not visible. So, for example, being a therapeutic consultant, I'm always looking at treatment centers. I'm always going to sober living houses to assess them to see if I would place someone there. First thing I look at is clinical. Used to be. Then physical plant of what is the place like. Now the first thing I look for is, and I do it very subtly. I don't make a big deal. I'm like, do you have naloxone on site? Yes. Where is it? I went to 15 treatment centers a month ago. 14 out of 15 of the treatment centers, it was behind at least one lock.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, at
And
least
how
one
many
lock.
seconds do we have? You said.
Exactly. Seconds count more than minutes. I mean, you have a matter of minutes, but if you don't know where it's at, or you've got to unlock it.
Or find the person with the key.
Well,
Mhm.
and then the way I explain it, because I work a lot with schools, is okay, so we're at a high school with what, 8 buildings? You would hope that it's not one nurse in one building that's trained and has access to it when there's thousands of kids. You know what I mean?
However, that's where we're at right now. There is a limited number of people that carry the naloxone, that know where it is, and they, I hate to say it, but people go to lunch, people go to the bathroom, and when seconds count, if you can't find somebody, people will die.
Mhm.
And the good news is that it's readily available. The bad news, in our school systems, it's not. Don't ask me the name of the high school, but I went to a high school, and I have a friend that is a principal. I forget the title, but he's in charge of when a kid gets caught with pills, gets caught with pot drugs. He is the one that goes through.
Disciplinary.
He's the disciplinary principal. He is the one that goes through kids' backpacks.
Hmm.
He's been a principal 18 years in the school system. And I went with a father of a deceased student, a all-star athlete who got injured, took a Percocet from a friend, died because it was laced with fentanyl. And to kind of, he wanted to donate some units to the school. But we were meeting with him. He had rubber gloves. He had a mask. He goes through kids' backpacks. He had never, ever seen a dosing of naloxone.
And that's his job.
Well, his job is safety. His job is to provide consequences and provide help. More importantly, help for someone who's been caught with illicit substances on the campus. He had never seen a nasal dosing. Now, that's not on him. It's a systemic problem, and in the systemic problem is a lack of awareness, a lack of education. Tom Horn, the superintendent of Arizona schools, just announced a task force called Stop It because they're realizing, and I mean, I've been to over 10 high schools, and it always goes to bump it up to the district level. Well, we have medication policy, and there's roadblock after roadblock. Fortunately, they're creating the task force because they're realizing these roadblocks are killing people.
I mean, statistically, we hear that 22 teenagers die every week from substance use. And I dare say, I feel like that's probably even underreported
Grossly
in a sense
underreported.
when you do the math. Because bigger picture, again, I can tell you that someone dies in this country from a drug overdose every 4.5 minutes, right? And 112,000 people on average a year. 70% of those deaths are synthetic opioids. So the majority is people stop breathing and die. And drugs don't discriminate. The number of dead 10 to 14-year-olds tripled in 1 year. Over 200,000 years of lost lives, right? They're not graduating. They're not getting jobs. They're not marrying. Like, I say this to kids. My goal, I'm the advocate for you. I'm trying to get you to live. I'm trying to get you beyond high school, beyond your teen brain, into your 20s, into your real life. But culturally speaking, this is where we are. You know, people can't ignore this. They might, but it impacts everyone. Like you asked the question, when? Okay, well, when babies are being poisoned, pets are being poisoned.
It's never
people,
too early.
No. And people are, I mean, say people graduate, build up a tolerance. You have people that will willingly take fentanyl to avoid being sick, right? They've moved up the chain. They did their pills. They went from a 10 milligram, doubled up to a 20, to a 40, to an 80. Well, what's cheaper than that is heroin. So then you use heroin, but 70% of the heroin today is filled with fentanyl. So you can, in theory, build up a tolerance. But if there's like Joe Schmo, everyday you and me who've never touched it, we're done. The first time we're exposed.
This is a naive question. If I can ask it, I don't know much about fentanyl other than it kills. Is there a high associated with it? Why are they using it? It's just a filler and it's inexpensive, or like
good.
Fentanyl does.
Feels good.
Opioids feel good.
I know.
Feel
So
good.
fentanyl is
an opioid.
Okay.
It's
a synthetic opioid.
You've got like your baby opioids, which are your pills. Then you got big sister heroin and synthetic, chemically made. But what isn't synthetic nowadays?
Right.
Meth.
Right.
Your marijuana synthetic. You cook it with butane.
Motor oil.
Everything is cooked and manufactured.
Okay.
So your fentanyl's like Queen Bee. She's the strongest of the opioids. But she's got some other family members coming along right now that are stronger than her.
Really?
Just to give I'm visual. So when we hear about the death toll and the death count, it is equivalent. Wrap your head around this, of a 730, a fully loaded, full of passengers, 737 crashing every day. A 737 crash every day is what we attribute, is what it's like on the death toll. I mean, we saw recently a door come off a plane. They grounded all the planes. Can you imagine the blowback, the uproar, the outcry if people saw a plane full of 737s going down every day and they didn't do anything about it? That's where we're at with this crisis. And that's why they call it a crisis. But everybody thinks it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen in my school. I mean, Stephanie had a parent recently. I'll let her share a story. It blew my mind. Do you know what I'm referring to? About
the one that didn't know?
Yeah, drug-free zone.
Drug-free policy.
Yeah.
Again.
Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I'll try to say without laughing, because I guess in my world, this is my niche. I talk about it every day. I think people should know and learn. You can't turn on the news. You can't miss the fact that drugs are everywhere. People know that, even if they don't know what it is. But a friend was at a salon locally, and I'm not going to name names either. But this lady literally said, well, we're a drug-free campus, so we don't have drugs on our campus.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I was like, are we on candid camera? Like, wait, what?
Again,
They don't vape here. We have vape detection devices. And I'm like, again, vaping is everywhere. Vaping is in the bathrooms, in plain view, exhaling in a sleeve. Look on the floor. If people don't know what these USB looking things are, they're not USB drives, they're vapes. If you really want me to connect that, You can vape fentanyl. Vaping isn't a drug. Vaping is a behavior.
mechanism? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you could vape water, nicotine, marijuana, heroin, fentanyl.
So I'm curious with this gal in particular, did she kind of get it? Because I mean, I'm a naive parent. I hate to admit I'm learning. And sometimes I think that if there's a policy in place or there's rules in place, that everybody's going to follow it. That's not the case, obviously. Did she, after a conversation, or were you gifted the opportunity to kind of help educate?
I think she just got angry, which I don't know. It may maybe she realized that people break rules. That
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Kid brain. I always say the two words: kid brain. Limited life experience. They don't know any better. Older brother, sister, friend sells to the 13-year-old. 13, 14-year-olds sleep over at a friend's house, and they're exposed to other family members. If you're not, I'll do like prevention. If you're not surrounding a young person with love, positive adult role models, coaches and grandparents and uncles and neighbors, and you're just letting them be exposed to what? The internet, social media, their friends,
Mm-hmm.
that's where they're going to learn norms. We need to intervene. I mean, this is the end of a school year. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility coming up with the summer schedule with kids. Freshmen host parties. Freshmen can't even drive cars, but freshmen take Ubers. Parents drop them off. They're drinking. They're lowered inhibitions, making poor decisions. What else are they doing?
Yeah.
What if they just take one pill from a trusted friend?
And I will tell you this, for people under the age of 21, it is easier for a kid to get a pill than it is a bottle of beer.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I have a niece. She's 15 years old. I said, Kaylee, that's her name. I can say that. I said, if you wanted to get some pills, she goes to a public high school. I go, could you find me a Xanax or an Adderall? She goes, oh, I don't hang around those kind of kids. I know you don't hang around those kind of kids, but could you?
Mm-hmm.
And she sheepishly, she kind of got this, well, yeah. She goes, everyone knows where to get it if you want it, but I don't do that. But I'd like to think part of it's because she gets to listen to me and knows what I do. But the reality is, it is so with social media, with it's so easy, so fast, and so available. There's even a whole set of emojis, like a shopping cart combined with a blue dot, which represent
a blue M. If they have a blue M on there, that hands down is fentanyl.
Which is flat out fentanyl. And they'll just put a shopping cart, blue dot with an M in it and a question mark, and they will get responses just like that.
Okay, so I want to make sure that you have plenty of opportunity. We've got about 30 minutes left for this segment. Talk about NarStop. How did the idea come about? What are some of the challenges you have putting it out there? Where do you want it to be? Where does it need to be? All that good stuff. And please, Stephanie, continue to jump in there to shape up the stories and the conversation, because your wisdom really is why Carey thought to have you here today. And we want to make sure that people continue to hear from both of you.
Absolutely. Well, I also did educational consulting, which means helping people find alternative schools.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a conference in Miami, and it was a very elite boarding school. The kind of boarding school where they wear the blue blazer with the little emblem. And I remember it because it was twos. There were 200 students on 200 acres, and hold on to this one, $200,000 a year to go to this school. And it was kind of like a meeting with consultants and programs. And I looked at what they did, and I said, I don't work with those kind of kids. So when I met the two headmasters, I said, hey, I don't place this kind of student. Why don't we use our 15 minutes to check on emails? And they go, well, we've heard about you. We've read about you. You're supposed to be an expert in addiction. We've had an ongoing debate the last 2 years. And they said, should we have Narcan on our campus? I think I cussed a little bit and said, yes. This is a no-brainer. This is like saying, should we have a fire extinguisher? Should we have running water? It's no longer a option. It's a necessity. But here we are, they're debating whether or not to get
Why? Because it's embarrassing, because they don't want to perpetuate it. Like what? That's insane.
What we're dealing with is a denial factor.
Like this woman that you described at the
Yep.
salon.
Perfect.
Not here, not my kid, not my school, not my community.
Yep. A denial factor, which is simply a lack of education and awareness. Also, stigma is a huge, huge, I live, eat, breathe this world. I did not realize how rampant the stigma still is. Oh, that's for a addict. That is a junkie problem. That we're successful. That doesn't happen in our, you know what? It does. And most of the people that are in unawareness don't become aware until it directly impacts them. That's the saddest piece of this whole puzzle, is because it is so available, but until it impacts someone directly, people think it's their problem. Someone else is going to deal with it.
I'll intervene in other new data that 4 out of 10 people nowadays know someone who's died of a drug overdose. 42% of the general public knows someone. So it's one of my openers. I'd like to show people this is where we are. This is how common it is. Most people know cutesy little sayings like just say no and the war on drugs. And that stemmed from back in the day in the 80s when 6,000 people died a year.
I mean, I'll self-disclose on this. My family, there's a number of factors that lead to substance misuse. One of them is genetics. My dad had 5 brothers. 5 out of 5 were alcoholics. 5 out of 5. My dad was a teetotaler, never drank. And he always told me, don't drink. Alcoholism runs in your blood. I drank, and guess what? It felt good. So what did I think as a 13-year-old? Old people, they're lying to me. They just don't want me to have fun. They just, they're a bunch of crudgmudgeons, But what no one can describe is how good it feels to a hurting brain, to a brain that is particularly with genetic predisposition. And with that, I was off to the races. And, I describe it, being a person in recovery, is when it starts off, it's like juggling Jello. You can keep the ball in the air. You can keep juggling. You can perform in life. You've heard the term functional alcoholic, functional addict. That's juggling the Jello, but it starts melting. Then it gets messy and it starts getting all over the place, and it splatters on everyone around you, hitting the hardest those that care about the person that's going through it.
So I can't encourage enough natural highs. We throw that word around, high, all the time. I'm like, what else do you love? Again, I'm stat girl, right? 70% of American households have pets that we treat like family. And I can always get people to connect on that. And I'm imagine that you don't get to go home and take care of them because you're dead. Imagine that someone comes into your house, leaves a backpack on the floor, and your flavored vape or your fentanyl's in there. And then a family pet or a toddler, someone that you love, eats it and dies. Imagine the guilt. Again, I'm not going to tiptoe around this. I'm not going to treat a kid like a kid. They want to engage in adult behaviors. There's no room for experimentation. I understand what you're saying when they were younger, but we have to treat them differently nowadays. You know what I mean? We used to not talk about suicide, mental health, and drugs. We have to.
Absolutely.
We have to check in with people daily. We can't just, again, wear the blinders, assume they're going to get through high school. We need to intervene and ask questions. I know people, not kids, people want to feel something, right? So we've just got to turn that pill for every ill mentality into those natural highs. Go for a walk, meditate, exercise, get into art therapy, coloring, read books. Fine if you like music. Get into it. Make it a passion. Make it a career. Start building towards your future.
And also teaching how to navigate the emotions that we don't like feeling. Sadness, anger, frustration, comparison, jealousy, envy, rage, grief, whatever. We also have to make sure that we have the tools to say, this is temporary. So is joy, happiness, and elation, and all that. And here's how you shift it.
Yeah.
And
okay.
one of those bad feelings that is probably one of the predominant drivers that we're experiencing right now, particularly post-COVID, is loneliness.
Mhm.
Loneliness is huge right now.
And many people are saying that they're extraordinarily lonely, even though they're surrounded by, some are lonely because literally they are spending time alone. But many people are experiencing loneliness, and they're
Mhm.
surrounded by their loved ones and great teammates at work and a community.
But they still feel
But they
lonely.
still feel lonely.
And
So sad.
when we start talking about social circles and things, one of the most accepting social circles is the drug use.
Yep.
Those that use drugs, because they found a common denominator on which to feel differently. So, hey, let's go get high. Let's go. Hey, I got this pill. It feels so good. Let's,
I have the answer to your ills. Yeah.
And in that process, people 737 every day into his mountainside.
Yeah. So, Carey, get us to NarStop, because we would be remiss if we did not have a chance to really talk about what you've created, and again, where it needs to be and how easy it is to use. So let's spend the next 20 minutes making sure that we do that.
Okay. So naloxone, the drug that is in Narcan, is the brand name. Kind of like if you get a cold, you don't say, hey, well, most people, some do, I'm sure, but most people don't say, hey, can you grab me a facial tissue? Usually they say, hey, can you grab me a Kleenex? So Narcan is the brand, but the drug is Kleenex. Or Kleenex. The drug is naloxone. and so everyone knows it as Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
So they, in the effort to combat the opioid crisis, they've made it readily available. They gave out, you ready for this number? It blew my mind. They gave out over 66 million boxes of naloxone last year. That being said, as we talked about earlier, it usually goes in someone's purse, backpack, cart, which is great if other people know where it is. But then again, we go back to this vicious cycle of it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to it's other people's problems. So as I was exploring, talking to schools, talking to even treatment centers, and said, where's your naloxone? It was not readily available. FDA has even said, you do not need to take a formal training in order to administer it. Just get it in their nose. But where is it when you need it? So I just quite bluntly, after the conference that I referred to, where the boarding schools said, should we have it? I was walking through the Miami airport, and every time I walk through an airport or somewhere and I see an AED, which is an automated defibrillator device hanging on a wall, I think to myself, gosh, I got to go to the gym more. I got to get in shape. I don't want to get zapped. And I'm thinking, why do we not have this for a life-saving? We've got fire extinguishers. We've got AEDs.
We've got condom machines, to go back to your comparison back then. These are all things that are right there where we need them.
Why do we not have this? And so that's what led to me developing the NarStop product. Wow. It's a wall-mounted, permanently placed, secure emergency medication delivery device. But more importantly, I'm coming more and more to the awareness. It's 1% about accessing naloxone. It's 99% about creating awareness, about educating, and about reducing stigma, because it can happen to anybody. I mean, we all know people that hate to fly. I need to take a Xanax to fly. They're taking it on the, I don't know what the statistics are. There probably aren't any on how many people get nervous flying, but that is a ripe area for an overdose, particularly if they got it from a friend. So my thought behind developing NarStop, number one, is the education, awareness, prevention. If people see it, maybe they'll think twice, like I do when I don't want to get zapped. I'm going to go walk a mile or jog. I'm not going to try that pill. And it also, when they hand out the boxes of naloxone, it comes out in a box. So there's this mystery of what's in the box. What we've created is is a unique design. The whole design, as of 2 days ago, we officially, I'm proud to announce, got a patent approved for the NarStop design.
Awesome.
Because it's shaped uniquely. Its delivery system is unlike anything other. It's got a clear face with a QR code that links directly to how to identify an overdose, how to administer the Narcan. We can do that in 30 seconds. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, is what we want to do is create a network of where people can get more education because it's bigger. Substance abuse is not so much about substance abuse, as you touched on earlier. It's about what's driving it. What is the discomfort? What is the uncomfortable feelings? How can you deal with that in a healthy way? Well, you can't do it if they're dead. So what we want to do with the NarStop is get them on walls. It becomes a talking point of, hey, why is that there? Well, here's the risks that are out there. Yeah, but I don't feel good. It becomes a focus for awareness, destigmatization, and prevention.
I kind of like the idea of, like, in your office, a water cooler conversation, something's hanging on the wall. Why wouldn't you put this on the wall? And then, as I've kind of encouraged, I know way too many families, right? Because their kid is dead. I'm friends with the parents. Maybe we put in memory of, and we put posters up, and you've got someone that lost their life too. And now it's a real education, prevention, harm reduction conversation starter. You walk up to the device, you see it, you see a visual of a person, you read their story. This could have saved a life. Don't let this happen to you. Don't learn through other people's tragedies. And that's really that's what I do a lot, is go out with community members. And I'm working with a family right now, again, that's only lost their kid 6 weeks ago, and they publicly speak, and they are the biggest advocates for Narcan. They are the ones that want it everywhere. They're a proud partner of us. They want to make sure that this gets out, because, again, they learned the hard way. It might not have saved their kid, but it might have. You just don't know.
If we remember the DARE program, if you look statistically and talk about the DARE program, remember just say no, it was a failure because drug use continued to rise during the DARE program. That being said, I've talked to so many people over the years that went through the DARE program and said, you know what, I went through the DARE program and I didn't use anything because of that, which is great. But the challenge is there was no way to quantify that in order to deem the DARE program a success. But it changed a lot of people's lives and also saved a lot of people's lives from having to experiment or trying to experiment with substances that now are no longer experimenting. It's Russian roulette. And so when you say, oh, the DARE program didn't work, it did work. However, there was no way to put a number on how many people didn't get involved in the problem because of it.
Back to the NarStop device itself. Is it coin operated? Am I putting money in to dispense it?
The NarStop device itself is purchased. and so there's
the unit.
There's a one-time cost. And it's permanently placed. It's 24 gauge steel with a plexiglass cover and 2 trays that are held in place by my favorite term, sacrificial pin. If you remember the old wall-mounted fire alarms that had the glass rod in them, that's a sacrificial component of a fire alarm. So we have sacrificial pins in there that takes 20 pounds of pull pressure to break to release the tray. And gives immediate access to the naloxone. So it's there all the time, know where it is, when it's needed, in case it's needed, get it out of the drawer and onto the wall, create a prevention program around it is what the real goal is.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll go back to just something that you said about where should it be.
Yeah.
I always ask, where should it not, where would you not have it? You'd have it everywhere.
Yeah.
From a gym to a grocery store, to a school, to a bar, to a restaurant.
To a church.
That was my next one. Everywhere.
Yep. A place of business.
Yeah.
You already mentioned airports, bus stations, train
Everywhere.
stations, laundromats, you name it.
I tell people I don't carry Narcan because I know someone that's using drugs, and I carry it because I want to save someone's life in case I run into someone that
Yeah.
needs it.
And again, I can't say it enough. There is no harmful side effects. It is benign. If someone literally is having a stroke, it's not going to hurt them. But we're going back to the challenge of, well, it costs money to put it up there. Well, it's not. I don't want. It's going to create more drug use if kids knows.
That's
people
so
know
frustrating.
And
It's so naive.
And
It's naive.
And I mean, I brought my favorite prop, which is a fire extinguisher. That we see fire extinguishers everywhere. Does that create pyromania?
Good for you.
You know,
Right.
if there's a fire
Right.
extinguisher over there, so maybe I can light this building on fire because they have fire extinguishers. That's just not that's thinking that is faulty.
Doesn't even make sense.
But
Silly.
but that's what people say.
I know.
That's what people
Yeah,
that's
like
where
go
they
back to that idea or that example for that the boarding school or whatever. Like it
Mhm.
was a stigma thing for them to have this place 2 years debating that conversation as to whether or not they should have a fire extinguisher on, where it needs to be when they need it.
And I think it takes time to change mindset. I know that. But we've gone from, oh my gosh, 3 out of 10 pills are killing and 5 out 7. Do we need to get to 10? Prevention is before the problem. I wish society would be more proactive versus reactive.
Right.
So again, I started saying, just imagine one campus with 8 buildings. You'd want one of these placed in every single building. You'd want multiple staff members trained on how to use it so that it didn't fall in just to the responsibility of one person. And great if a kid sees it. Great if a kid takes it. They probably need it because that's the culture they live in.
And one of the common pieces of feedback I get when people first see this is, well, what if they steal it? Great. Just like Stephanie said, great.
Good.
They probably need it.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to restock it? You can restock it. You can get it free from so many places. I mean, the cost right now, the price point is $40 for a box of 2 doses, which is, I mean, then you go into the debate of how much is a life worth,
Right.
right?
And is there a shelf life?
Shelf life on it printed is 3 years. If it's past 3 years, it still has value. There's a temperature range that's recommended. I forget exactly what it is. I think it's up to anyway.
Don't leave it in your car.
Don't leave it in your car in
Arizona.
Arizona.
Here in Arizona. Right.
But the shelf life, the sticker on it is 3 years, so it's good for a very, very long
Again,
time.
not unlike a fire extinguisher that has to be tested and changed out, I think every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we've done with the NarStop unit is we have little stickers so that you can on each tray put the expiration date on the side.
Perfect.
So you can just walking by visually make sure that it's loaded through the clear glass, plexiglass. We didn't go with regular glass because people would break it and there's potential for injury, which leads to risk management and da. So we went with plexiglass.
Yeah.
But seeing the actual nasal administrator there takes away the mystery. It takes it out of the box. It lets people say, hey, all I do is put it in their nose, and hopefully people that are that potentially could be at risk says, I'm not going to take that pill because I don't want that thing stuck up my nose.
Right. All right. So how do people get in touch with you and who ought to be purchasing this? Let's talk a little bit around, I'm going to call it marketing strategy or business strategy for lack of a better word, because that's part of why you and I talked about even doing this segment today. More people need to know about it. This is education as much as it is awareness and actually saving lives. So who needs to know about it? How can our listeners and viewers help get this into the, every location, everywhere?
Well, that's the goal. That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we've been working with coalitions. Their budgets, they do an annual budget, so none of the coalitions that are out there at a grassroots level have immediate access to funding. We're going to be going to more government agencies to try and get funding to get these in public places. So the marketing strategy is in the works. It's not defined. It's right now it's a grassroots level. We're working on expanding it. We have a website. It's real simple. NarStop, NarStop.com. So like narcotic stop, NarStop.com. And that leads to where you can order it, learn more about it. Again, the site is going to be ever expanding, evolving, but it's right now that is our primary source of information where people can go to learn about it and even order it if they so choose.
Mm-hmm.
I will emphasize that I encourage parents to be proactive voices, right? If you're concerned about it, you go to your school, you go to the board, you advocate. The only person that's going to advocate for themselves is themselves for the most part. And I think I say it all the time, again, 20-year plus career, talking to people, just a parent voice, a kid voice is bigger than mine. I just came here to get the ball rolling, get you to start thinking about the concerns in your life and things you can do, action steps, being proactive. So if we got someone listening, wants to know more, sure, you check out the website, but go to your school, private school, public school, go to the board, talk to the people that can make those decisions. And
Go to your local politician, a city council person. Put a
True.
bug in their ear that this is something that needs to be out there. Go to a church leader. Go say, a lot of 12-step meetings like AA are held in churches. A lot of NA, which is Narcotics Anonymous, are held in churches. This needs to be wherever people gather because there's, like Stephanie said, there's the percentage. I think the percentage that I checked, 1 in 5 families has an active addiction in it. 1 in 5. I go to a football game where there's 100,000 people in my mind, and I look at 20,000 people, and I think in myself, I'm so happy they got these 2 hours where they can root and cheer and not worry about their loved one if they're alive or if they're dead. It's something that needs to get out there, but it is going to take a voice of people to say, hey, why isn't this like a fire extinguisher? It can happen anywhere, anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not afraid to say it. If someone's looking for a way to sponsor, find some big, this is an important issue to them and they want to make a financial support and backing, we're open to that. I mean, think about that. If you really want to save life, this is like your calling. This is where you want to make a donation. You want to get involved and learn more. That's what that Stop It Coalition that's starting here, the task force in Phoenix. I'm all over that. I want to volunteer my time. That's my passion. I don't have the checkbook. I would love to, but maybe somebody says, I have the financial backing, but this is a cause that I need to learn more about. I'm not afraid to put it out there. You know what I mean? If I wasn't saving all the kids, I'd save all the dogs. That's where I'd put my money. But we all have our passion project.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping someone hears that, gets that. And if not, that's what we're here for. Ask more questions.
We're grateful that both of you do have the passion for this.
Yeah, to get it to the stage where I'm at right now, I just tell you the truth. I took second out on the house, taking out loans to get this going to the point. And now we're at the point where we do need help. We do need, and there's space on the front decal where the QR code is that we can say this unit is sponsored by, be it Kroger, be it Arizona Cardinals, be it Tempe Union School District, be it whatever entity that wants to demonstrate through action that they care about their community and are not going to put their head in the sand around this issue.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You and I have been on the phone several times as you've been committing your life to this. And we've, again, had some very candid conversations about the risks that you've been willing to take, both financially and time-wise and career-wise, to make this happen. So to see you at this stage of the game, with it now patented, sitting in the studio, we're having a conversation about it. Stephanie's here to support you and get the message out. And the fact that you're speaking now nationwide with this standing next to you is extraordinarily exciting. And I know that you would tell me that it's just the beginning and you have a long way to go. Yeah. So hopefully for our viewers and listeners, you are inspired today by Carey and Stephanie's conversation and their dedication, and will find a way to get these units into any building, everywhere that your life is touched. Again, it's NarStop.com.
Correct.
You both are on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yep. So Carey Davidson and Stephanie, how do I say your last name?
Siete.
Siete. I thought so.
Yep.
I love it. Okay. We have just another couple minutes left. Anything else that we hadn't thought to discuss and ask that you feel like really we need to make sure that we mention before we close out today's program?
The biggest thing is learn about it, educate yourself, arm yourself with information and naloxone. Because again, it's one of my favorite lines Stephanie's ever said is, it's not a school issue, it's a community issue. Mm-hmm. And we all live in a community, and this is impacting every community out there. Mm-hmm. Every community out there.
It's a ripple effect, right? Like everyone's like, oh, you talk about drugs. I'm like, well, it's tied to crime. It's tied to homelessness. It's tied to mental health. It's everything's connected. So if you're concerned about one issue, drugs fund a lot. That's the thing that people, why? People make a lot of money selling this stuff. People get addicted. So again, it's a bigger picture ripple effect. If you need to know more, reach out to one of us, attend coalitions and seminars. I would be happy to even create events and seminars for people who want to know more. Think outside the box. I've mentioned schools a couple of times, corporate offices, lunch and learns,
convenience stores.
Yeah. And do it before
talks.
And let's do it before it's too late.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. All right, gang. Thank you. Please come back again and let's have a conversation and celebration as to where NarStop has ended up, and bring some of those great sponsors and business owners in with you to thank them for helping to save lives. And of course, as you mentioned, continue to educate around drugs and just the concern that we have for how quickly lives are taken. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona. Some media lean left, some lean right, and we lean NarStop. Until next time, I'm Carey Nowicki. Thanks for listening.